The moon, enormous and red as a burning ember, cast strange shadows over the city. Detective Ricardo felt a shiver, despite the heat of the Mexican night. A scream echoed. A woman's scream, full of terror, that seemed to come from the very earth. Was it Isabella, the witch he loved, trapped? Or worse, was something far worse happening? An ancient symbol, engraved on a stone, gleamed in the moonlight, emitting a ghostly glow. What did that symbol mean? And most importantly, would Ricardo be able to save her before it was too late? The moon bled in the sky, a giant red eye watching the sleeping city. Ricardo, the detective with weary eyes and a heart broken into 1,000 pieces, felt the sweat trickle down his back. It wasn't the stifling heat of the Mexican night that affected him. It was a bad premonition, a chill that came from his soul. Isabella's scream still echoed in his ears, a thin, sharp cry that seemed to scrape against the darkness itself. A scream that came from the depths of the earth, as if she were being swallowed by the city's entrails. He remembered the image. Isabella, her hair black as night, her green eyes shining with a fear he had never seen before. And then, silence. A silence so heavy it seemed to suffocate Ricardo. Only the echo of the scream and the frantic pounding of his own heart remained. He clutched the amulet Isabella had given him, a small black stone, smooth as silk, with an engraved symbol that glowed with a strange light under the moonlight. A symbol he couldn't decipher, a riddle that tormented him as much as Isabella's disappearance. He had consulted the oldest books, spoken to the wisest scholars, but the symbol remained a mystery. It was as if the stone itself whispered secrets in a language he didn't know. At that moment, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was Sophia, a friend of Isabella's, a young and impulsive witch, with hair red as fire and blue eyes full of worry. Sophia seemed charged with energy, agitated and anxious. She carried with her the scent of herbs and incense, a strong and mysterious aroma that both soothed and frightened at the same time. "Ricardo," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I know where she is." Ricardo felt a wave of hope, a spark that broke through the darkness that enveloped him. But hope was a thin thread, easily broken. Sophia's voice carried a tone of despair that left him uneasy. "Where?" Ricardo asked, his voice hoarse with worry. With each passing second, the fear of never seeing Isabella again consumed him. Sophia pointed to a dark and poorly lit alleyway, a place where the shadow became almost tangible, a place that exuded a sense of evil. "It's in the ancient temple of the Xoloitzcuintlis, in the heart of the city. I saw the symbol, the same one that was on her stone, shining inside." Ricardo's heart sank. The temple of the Xoloitzcuintles. It was a legendary place, a place where the boundary between worlds was thinner, a place of ancient secrets and dark powers. It was a place he had always wanted to avoid, but now he was forced to confront it. Sophia continued, her voice low and grave. "It's a trap, Ricardo. Someone is using black magic, a very powerful force. I could feel its presence, and it's dark, very dark." Ricardo didn't need more details. He already knew the risk was great, immense, but he had no choice. Isabella was in danger, and he would do whatever it took to save her, even if it meant facing the unknown, facing the deepest darkness. He held tight to Isabella's amulet, the cold and mysterious stone, feeling its weight and the promise of danger it carried. "Let's go," said Ricardo, his voice resolute, despite the fear that invaded him. The two of them headed towards the dark alley, the shadows seeming to move around them, as if watching their every step. The red moon continued to watch, a silent witness to the battle that was about to begin. The fight against a supernatural power, a fight for love that transcended dimensions, a fight that could seal their fate forever. With every step they took, the suspense grew. The atmosphere became more charged, more oppressive. The adventure was just beginning. The alley smelled of garbage and sewage, a dark and damp corridor that seemed to swallow the little light the moon could cast. Ricardo and Sophia walked in silence, only the sound of their footsteps echoing in the labyrinth of alleys. The air was heavy, charged with a strange, palpable energy like a thick fog. Sophia, despite her apparent courage, trembled slightly. She squeezed a small vial of herbs in her hand, as if seeking comfort in the familiar fragrance. Ricardo could feel the accelerated pulse of his own heart beating in unison with hers. Fear was an invisible link that united them. At the end of the alley, an old and worn wooden door stood imposingly, swallowed by the shadows. Above it, engraved on dark, almost rotten wood, shone the same symbol as Isabella's stone. A circle with 3 crosses inside, emitting a ghostly light. The glow was so intense, it seemed to burn the eyes. It was a sinister mark, a clear warning of the danger that awaited them. Ricardo touched the door, feeling the cold, damp wood under his fingers. It creaked open, revealing a surprisingly spacious interior. It was the temple of the Xoloitzcuintles, or what remained of it, an ancient and dilapidated place, but one that still emanated an intense, almost tangible power. The air was stuffy, heavy with the smell of damp earth, dust, and something indefinable, something ancient and sinister. In the center of the room, under the ghostly glow of the symbol engraved on the floor, Isabella was tied to a stone altar. Her eyes were closed, her face pale and her breath shallow. She seemed weak, almost lifeless. Around her, black candles burned, creating shadows that danced on the walls, like ghostly specters. But it wasn't only Isabella who was there. An imposing figure loomed behind her, shrouded in deep shadows, its form almost indistinct. It was a malevolent and imposing presence, emanating an aura of terrifying power. Ricardo felt a shiver run down his spine, a visceral fear that froze his movements for a moment. Sophia let out a muffled cry, pointing to the shadowy figure. "It's a nagual!" she exclaimed, her voice trembling. "A powerful nagual! He's draining Isabella's life force!" Ricardo, despite the terror he felt, knew he couldn't hesitate. He approached cautiously, with each step feeling a wave of negative energy. He felt a pang of pain in his own soul, a deep connection with Isabella, as if the evil that afflicted her also affected him. The stone he wore around his neck, Isabella's amulet, began to vibrate intensely, as if pulsing in response to the nagual's presence. The shadowy figure turned slowly, its eyes gleaming with a sinister and menacing light. It was a tall, thin man, his face covered by a mask of bones. His voice, when it echoed through the temple, was like the scraping of nails on a coffin. "You dared to interfere," he said, his voice charged with an ancestral rage. "She is the key to my power, and no one will stop me." Ricardo knew this was a battle they couldn't win alone. The nagual was too powerful. He needed to find a way to break the spell, to free Isabella, but without becoming another victim of the nagual's power. Time was slipping away like sand through his fingers, and Isabella's life diminished with each passing second. The fight for his beloved, the fight between 2 worlds, was at its peak. Survival depended on a miracle, on an act of courage and love capable of traversing dimensions and defying death itself. The red moon, an immense and bloody eye, witnessed the scene in the ancient temple. Ricardo felt the weight of that sinister energy, so dense he could almost touch it. Isabella, pale as death, was there, trapped, her eyes closed, her breath weak as a whisper. The nagual, an imposing and terrifying figure, with his bone mask and eyes that gleamed like infernal embers, emanated an aura of profound evil. Sophia, trembling but determined, was at his side, her blue eyes full of fear and courage. Ricardo knew time was short. The nagual was draining Isabella's life, stealing her vital energy to fuel his own dark powers. With each passing second, Isabella became weaker, closer to death. The amulet he carried, Isabella's black stone, pulsed in his hand, like a heart beating in despair. It was a connection, a deep bond with Isabella, an invisible thread that united him to his beloved, even from a distance. Suddenly, Ricardo remembered a passage in an ancient book, an ancestral ritual to break powerful spells. It was a risk, an enormous danger, but it was the only chance. He needed to use the power of the amulet, channel the energy of the stone, and unite with Sophia's magic. It was a union of 2 worlds, a force that might be able to match the nagual's power. He explained the ritual to Sophia, his words quick and hurried, full of urgency. Sophia, despite her fear, followed the instructions, her nimble fingers moving over the ingredients she had brought, herbs, incense, and crystals that glowed with a soft light. The air became charged with magic, with a visible energy that seemed to vibrate between the two, between light and shadow. Ricardo approached the altar, holding Isabella's amulet firmly. He closed his eyes, concentrating all his energy, all his love for Isabella, on a single point. He felt the energy of the stone pulsing in his veins, a strong and powerful current that filled him with strength. It was as if the amulet became part of him, an extension of his own soul. Sophia recited the ancestral words, her voice firm and vibrant, breaking the charged silence of the temple. The herbs and incense ignited, emanating a strong and pungent aroma that seemed to repel the darkness. The crystals shone intensely, projecting rays of light that clashed against the shadows, illuminating the space like lightning bolts of hope. Ricardo felt an immense force flowing through him, an ancestral and powerful energy that connected him to Isabella. It was like an explosion of light and heat that invaded the temple, pushing the darkness into the shadows. The Nagual recoiled, its form wavering and unsteady, as if the energy of the ritual was burning it. It let out a roar of fury, a wave of evil that clashed against the growing strength of the two. The air became electrified, full of energy, the struggle between light and darkness reaching its peak. The combined force of Ricardo and Sophia, charged with love and determination, seemed finally to overcome the Nagual's strength. The shadows receded, the Nagual's gleaming eyes went out, and its form began to disintegrate. The spell was breaking. Isabella, who until then seemed almost dead, opened her eyes. A sigh escaped her lips. She looked at Ricardo, a mixture of relief and admiration in her gaze. Ricardo felt a wave of happiness, as if a huge weight had been lifted from his shoulders. They had won. They had survived. They had saved the love that united them, a love that transcended the boundary between the two worlds. The red moon, a silent witness to their battle, seemed to finally lose its menacing glow, giving way to the beginning of a new dawn. But the struggle, the danger, certainly hadn't ended. They knew that the forces of evil continued to lurk, ready to strike again. The war between two worlds was far from over. But the instant the Nagual's form dissipated into black dust, a tremor ran through the temple floor. A deep crack opened in the ground, right at the feet of Ricardo, Isabella, and Sophia, revealing a dark and deep abyss. A cold and fetid wind rose from the hole, carrying a smell of sulfur and death. From the depths of the abyss, a hoarse and cavernous voice echoed, a voice that seemed to come from the depths of hell. "You thought you had defeated me. I am older than this world, more powerful than you imagine. The fight has just begun." From the hole emerged a grotesque creature, with eyes shining with hatred. A creature even more terrifying than the Nagual. A creature made of shadows and darkness, emanating a supernatural power that froze the blood of Ricardo and Sophia. The creature's eyes fixed on Isabella, who cowered, terrified, realizing that the battle had only just begun, and that the true enemy had not yet been revealed. The creature had a terrifying strength. It was a being of immeasurable darkness, and Isabella seemed to be the key to all its strength and power. The moon, once red as a burning ember, now hid behind a dark cloud, as if frightened by that imposing creature. Ricardo clutched the amulet around his neck, feeling its energy pulsing in despair. He knew he now faced an evil far greater than he had imagined, an ancestral and implacable enemy. The survival of Isabella, Sophia, and perhaps even the salvation of the world itself depended on the next battle, on a fight against a supernatural power of unimaginable proportions. The struggle between the two worlds had taken a terrible and unexpected turn. After all, who or what was this sinister creature that emerged from the depths of the abyss? And what ancient secrets did it guard? The answer was hidden in the darkness, waiting to be revealed in the next chapter of the story, in the next episode.